Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks. On Friday, the 17th day of August, year of our Lord 2012. Welcome to the John Moore Show. We have a whole list, as usual, on standeo.com of earth change headlines dealing with wildfires and drought and predictions for a winter that could be a bit worse than normal, what we've grown to think of as normal. I'm not going to go through those headlines one at a time or even go through them at all because we used to have 1 hour here to talk about some really important things. I do expect Ann Morrison to be calling in here shortly, and we'll be getting caught up with her on matters that are important. I have 2 speaking engagements coming up I want to tell you about. One is a week from today at Ziggy's Restaurant in Springfield, Missouri. That's at the corner of Sunshine and Glenstone. It's important to know that because there's 3 different Ziggy restaurants in Springfield, Missouri. The one at the corner of Sunshine and Glenstone, 2 major streets in Springfield, Missouri, 5:30 p.m. I'll be talking about the effects of electromagnetic pulse attack and violent climate change. We focus primarily on electromagnetic pulse attack. That's free and open to the public at 5:30 p.m. The weekend of September 1st and 2nd, Labor Day weekend, we're going to have a Patriot Symposium at the Viberna, Missouri Country Club in Viberna, Missouri. I'll be talking to Tim Spencer and have details posted on my website. That event also will be free and open to the public. I'll be speaking. Command Sergeant Major Page will be speaking. We'll have a speaker on long-range tactical rifle marksmanship, a speaker on emergency communications, a speaker on emergency medical trauma treatment. And here's our first break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. This is J.R. Moore. It is Friday, the 17th day of August. I got reminded last night by a friend that I need to give everybody a reminder about the slightly schizophrenic nature of doing what we do as patriots, which is attempt to live a normal life, going to work every day, paying our bills, while at the same time preparing for the end of the world. It is a bit crazy-making. It is a bit schizophrenic, but it is the quandary we find ourselves in, having to do those 2 things. Go to work every day, pay the bills, live what appears to be a normal life, while at the same time preparing for the end of the world as we know it. It's a balancing act, and everybody's going to handle it slightly differently. And I urge you to just keep in mind what it is exactly you're doing, which is still living a normal life and getting ready for the end of the world as we know it. That's an acronym, by the way, TEOTWAWKI. Before we get to Ann, I got a quick update. I mentioned this before, but it's very important. The spouse of the Department of Defense employee told their civilian employer 3 days ago, earlier this week, issued a warning, basically, to their employer, saying the following. It was a 2-word warning: leave now. That was the warning: leave now. Of course, these folks are out on the East Coast of the United States, and they're at risk of tidal waves coming in, either from the Canary Islands or from a pole shift. The Canary Islands are, once again, very active with seismic activity to the point where the government there is issuing an alert to people. I'm not sure about evacuations, but evacuations would probably be prudent depending on where the people are. I have a number of several reports that I can't verify yet, that I can't go public with yet, that if they prove true, and I hope to find out over the weekend if they're true or not, I'll certainly give you some updates Monday morning. And I hope this coming week to have some of the first-hand witnesses who have actually seen and heard the Russian troops in the United States. It's time that we do that. I have names and phone numbers. I'll be talking to these men and women and try to get some of them to agree to come on the air while protecting their identity. So without further ado, we do have patiently waiting in the green room my friend Ann Morrison. Ann is a scientist, Ann is an engineer, and she's very diligent about paying attention to the things that concern us regarding seismic activity, volcanism, radioactive things coming out of Fukushima, Japan, bizarre, crazy, dangerous weather events. Good morning, Ann.
Well, we had rain last night. I got a sixth of an inch of rain, almost a fifth, almost 2/10.
Really?
Yes, and other people south and east of me, in the St. Louis viewing area, got more than that. So we had thunder and lightning and rain, and we're very grateful for all of that.
Absolutely.
The lightning was especially heavy, and I believe that's because the Earth's atmosphere has been charged up from the flares that have been coming off of the sun, and I think we still have residual energy from the July 12th flare that did so much damage.
Well, what I've heard, Ann, and maybe you can give some scientific basis to what I'm about to say, is that all lightning is a rapid concentration of electrical energy that's there all the time anyway.
Well, to a certain extent, that's true. When a flare comes off the sun, it does bring with it charged particles, and the positive charged particles are the ones that create the lightning. In other words, the atmosphere, if the flare is big enough, the atmosphere will light up. If it's not big enough, it'll ionize the ionosphere, which is what the RF people use to bounce signals off of. But if it's strong enough, it'll actually break through and come into the atmosphere and remain in the atmosphere in the troposphere is where we live. And then when there is a storm, I mean, it's ready to discharge at any time. It just needs an excuse. And these storms that came through eastern Missouri last night had a lot of lightning, and in fact, we had ground strikes.
I know, not far from me, Cuba, Missouri, which is in the county I live in, Crawford County. I heard they had 3 inches of rain in 3 hours.
Well, that's monsoon level rain.
Oh yeah, that's a massive amount of water coming out of the sky. And if you're in a flat area with poor drainage, which Cuba is not, by the way, it's a fairly high place, you would have some severe flooding problems pretty quickly.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate that I'd like to see us build some retention basins. We've been through a severe drought this summer, and we're still in the state of an extreme drought here. And we need to be capturing this water because otherwise it runs off and causes landslides and flooding. And then when we have it doesn't replenish it comes down so fast that it doesn't have time to sink into the ground and replenish the aquifers.
Right.
And our aquifers now, apparently, not because of this drought, but as a result of poor water management in the Midwest, that our aquifers are being drawn down, and that means that a lot of plant species cannot send their roots down to water, and they're dying off. If we want to turn the Midwest into a desert, then just keep doing what you're doing. Dig your wells deeper, draw the water down, and pretty soon it'll look like Arizona. Right.
Well, that's certainly something to keep in mind. Do you have any updates on what's going on with the Canary Islands?
I don't see anything in particular. Now the ones that the pictures that I look at, or the information that I look at, would show anything above a 2.5, and I don't see anything like that on the Canary Islands. I do see, let's see, there is one. There was a 4.6 that they have in the last 7 days, and just south of that, kind of where the bulge of Africa meets the bulge of South America on the Atlantic Ridge, there was a 5.3. Now that would be quite a ways south of the Canary Islands. I'm interested in that area just because it's because the two continents are so close, and to see an earthquake in that area is disturbing. Also, we see earthquakes in the North Atlantic Ridge, and for instance, there was a 5.3 that was just southeast of Greenland, so it's fairly close to Iceland, and we know that there's volcanic action in Iceland, and in fact there was a 4.6 on the this is an Icelandic word, Reykjanes Ridge, which is just south of Iceland.
Right.
So anytime you catch earthquakes in that area, you know that you're looking at possible future eruptions in Iceland. The volcanic report says that Indonesia is active, and they've been watching in Japan after the earthquake and tsunami. They've been watching Sakurajima, and it exploded this last week, and they're worried about that particular volcano because it has a history, and they thought that maybe the earthquake in particular would be related to seismic activity there. We have Tungurahua in Ecuador, as well as Reventador. Now that's in around the Caribbean, and just south of the Caribbean. Ecuador is on the Pacific side of South America, but it's considered part of or close enough to the Caribbean plate that it could have an effect in the Caribbean. And of course, I watch the Caribbean very closely because that is one of the areas from which we might get a tsunami. We were very lucky with that earthquake that occurred in Haiti, that we didn't get a tsunami, but it moved sideways instead of up and down. So we were very lucky there.
Right. That was certainly, if there was any blessing out of that was certainly it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I might tell you that there's an article out about the methane that's coming up in Louisiana. Remember the big
the sinkhole? Yeah.
The sinkhole. Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned there's more than one sinkhole. There's hundreds of sinkholes, or else I read that someplace, and it's very serious. And we have a quote here that says, if it were to explode, it would be in the range of 1.5 thermonuclear hydrogen, that is bombs, the most powerful United States weapon in active service. Call that a P-83. So if it should ignite or explode, and that would have the same effect as 100 Hiroshima bombs.
Hold that thought, Ann. We got a break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. This is J.R. Moore. It is Friday the 17th of August. We're visiting with Ms. Ann Morrison. There's a link to Ann's website on my links page at thelibertyman.com. Just scroll down on my links page to the white picket fence. Click on it, and you'll be at Ann's website instantaneously. And I was doing a little research during the break. The earthquake swarm in the Canary Islands is small earthquakes. They had 45 earthquakes yesterday alone. So they're not large. Most of them are under 2, but there are a lot of them.
Well, if there are a lot of them, and they're under 2, it may have more to do with magma moving than with plate slippage. Right.
Some are referred to as volcanic earthquakes. That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a possibility that that volcano there is growing some more. The one that's still underwater. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got a caller here, Ann. We've got Jeff in North Carolina. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. How's everyone today?
Great.
Great. Say, I just wanted to make a comment in regards to that sinkhole in Louisiana. And it's more of a physics problem than what they're making it out to be. Somebody added up the BTU value of the butane that's below ground there, held sequestered in the salt dome. And they came up and did a little multiplication, and they said, wow, that's as much power as 1.5 bombs or 100 Hiroshimas. And what the falsity is, this is a false flag type thing. And it's just meant to scare people needlessly. Now, not that there can't be an explosion, mind you. That's probably a given if there's an ignition source. So if they have lightning and there's a gas off there in that area, yes, they could have ignition. Excuse me. The problem of the whole amount, anything with ANE at the end of it, propane, butane, which this is apparently, it requires a certain amount, an exact amount almost. There's a percentage of mixture of oxygen to fuel that's needed. So to get complete ignition, you'd require actually an oxygen source that would also be contributory to that. So they'd have to put in somebody'd have to put in an oxygen source to make that go off in a big way. That's impossible because of the saturation of the gas. It's in liquid form besides. So it's highly unlikely that the whole amount will go off.
Well, Jeff, that's good news. We're glad to hear that.
Very good.
Okay, thank you for the call, sir. Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds like Jeff did his homework, doesn't it, Ann?
Yes, and I appreciate him telling us that. I do want to say that there is a health hazard with butane. Now they're saying that it's butane. There are methane leaks also in that area, and some of the sinkholes are spewing out methane. They're blaming it on a butane hole because that's what they were pumping. They were pumping it through a pipe, and the pipe bent, and the butane leaked out. But there's also methane there, and the workers are required to wear respirators because butane is a health risk. But they haven't handed out any to the people who live there. So there's been some angry people that want to know why they aren't being protected.
Well, if you have to wear a respirator, you can't live there. You have to leave, I would think. I mean, you can't wear a respirator 24/7. You know.
Oh well, it depends on whether it has self-contained oxygen or not. Whether they're wearing some kind of backpack to provide them with the air. Depends on the respirator. It may not be just a face mask.
Well, if it's dangerous enough that you need a respirator, you need to evacuate the area, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's what the people there are saying, and they aren't doing that.
Well, they should evacuate then. They have to wait for the government to tell them to evacuate?
Actually, the locals are talking to the company.
Can't hear you, Ann.
I'm sorry. The locals are talking to the company and to their representative in the Office of Conservation. So they're talking to their local politicians. And then there's environmental people that are involved, including the Louisiana Environmental Action Network. And they have, in addition to over 12 areas in and around this large sinkhole, they are having waters rolling from escaping methane, ethane, and propane. Locals have also reported tremors and houses shaking. I mean, remember when we were talking about the Macondo well and the fact that it was leaking methane?
Right.
And since that time, there have been fissures that have been growing, and they've been growing in from the Gulf of Mexico into the coastal plains of Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama and parts of Texas. And these are fissures in the ground. Now, you know, Louisiana and...
Hold on, Ann. We got a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We do have Ms. Ann Morrison with us, and we're just going to continue. Proceed, Ann.
Yes, well, just the worst case disaster, the disaster that they've come up with, although the potential effects should an explosion occur. Apparently what happened was that a Texas company had drilled into a salt dome, and in June or July, I think in July, and all of a sudden they started having seismic activity there. Not big enough for the USGS to be interested in it because it's not on a fault line. And then when the sinkhole happened, the seismic reading stopped, and now they're yeah. And
that
now
acts as a relief valve. It sounds like.
Sounds like it. And so something collapsed, and they think it was part of a salt dome. And now the seismic activity is picking up again, and they must be measuring that locally because it's not big enough. I mean, it's below 2, and USGS wouldn't have seismic equipment in that area in any case.
Right.
Just let me, in case, now this is an old report of what might happen, and they're hoping to get an updated report now that they know better what's happening. They think what's happening is that this Texas company had drilled into a cavern, a salt cavern, and was storing methane in it, and that they don't want the ceiling to collapse on that salt dome, so they've asked that company to come in there and drill relief holes. Well, the local people don't want them to drill anything in that area because they know that it's full of caves, you know, and so they don't want anything else to collapse. But anyway, the fireball radius would be about a third of a mile, and the air blast radius would be about 2 miles. Well, that's with 20 psi overpressures. Down to 5 psi overpressure would be out to 5 miles. And the thermal radiation radius, now this one is the scariest one to me, is about 10 miles. And that would be third degree burns over all exposed skin. It would start fires in flammable materials, and it would contribute to a firestorm if large enough. Now that whole area is part of the drought area. I mean, it's hard to think of Louisiana as being part of a drought area.
It is.
Yes. So there's a lot of flammable materials there, dead trees, dead brush, and anything that would burn. Now, it would not have any radiation because a butane explosion hopefully doesn't contain any radioactives. Now, I'm not going to say that it's pure butane because nothing in nature is pure, and it certainly probably contains radon. So there would be, I believe, there would be some radiation potential, and the fireball and the thermal radiation would be less than a H-bomb. Mm-hmm. Now, it's breathing butane is hazardous, and it can cause all sorts of things, including heart attacks and memory loss and frostbite and euphoria, drowsiness, narcosis, and asphyxia, and the main thing about that is what our caller said, is there's no oxygen source. I mean, they have to, it does not contain itself oxygen, it just contains carbon and hydrogen. You know, it's just another molecule that's a little bit bigger than the methane one. The methane one is CH4, which is one carbon molecule with 4 hydrogen molecules, and the hydrogen we know is flammable, and when it reacts with oxygen, then it creates carbon dioxide and water.
Right.
So the oxygen, if there were to be an explosion, if there were to be a spark, if there were to be a lightning strike, if that butane cavern top were to fall in and the butane be released, the caller said it's being stored as liquid, but when it's released, when the pressure is off of it, then it would evaporate and get into the air, and so potentially people would suffocate from lack of oxygen.
Right. And we got some callers on hold here. The first one is a regular caller, Robin Grant. Good morning, Robin.
Robin.
Hi, good morning. Hey, John, if I'm right, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, I made note of it. I just hope you have a great day. And,
it will be. Thank you.
Ann, I have a question for you. We've had some huge earthquakes around the world. I mean, it's been lighting up, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of damage associated with these, because if they did change the Richter scale, these would be even bigger earthquakes. So I was just wondering, why are there no tsunamis? Why doesn't there seem to be more devastation with like these 7.0 plus earthquakes?
Yeah, well, we had very few big earthquakes. In fact, we had none at all between April 12th, when the an 8 struck in the northern part of the Sea of Cortez, the Gulf of California, and then the earthquake, the magnitude of the earthquakes went way down for 4 months. I mean, on April 12th, that's when the earthquake struck off of Southern California, and then we had none. And at that time, we were at perihelion, which means that we were as far away from the sun as we were going to get. Now we're coming up to equinox, and that'll be in about a month. So we're in a month window of the equinox, and we're getting closer to the sun as we travel the orbit. And we've just had a 7.7. Oh, the one in the Gulf of California was 7, and that occurred on April 12th. 4 months later, that's like 2 days ago, on August 14th, or 3 days ago, we had a 7.7 between Japan and Russia. And the reason we didn't have any damage from that was because it was so deep. You know, it was like 400 miles deep. That is a place where there's subduction going on, and the earthquake was on the subduction zone, but apparently it wasn't an up and down. And besides that, it was so deep that any damage it wouldn't have reached the surface to give damage. Now, we are expecting that there are going to be larger earthquakes. We did have the twin earthquakes off of the west coast of northern Sumatra, and they were registered at an 8.6 and an 8.2 on April 11th. We seem to be having more doublets. And when Lucy Jones talks from Caltech, she's concerned about the doublets that occurred in Yorba Linda, California. It was only a 4.5 or 4.6, but she said the chances of a large earthquake on the San Andreas Fault rose to 1 in 1,000.
Fascinating. Robin, we answer your questions?
Yep, and thank you, and you both have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now we have John in Mississippi. Good morning, John.
Morning. Ann said that you would possibly need some kind of sheet metal or a World War II helmet to protect your brain from a CME.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you have a CME in it and it takes steel to protect your brain from the electromagnetic waves, why would aluminum protect your electronics?
Oh, okay.
Well, any metal will provide shielding as long as the metal is not in direct contact with electronics. Then it would defeat the purpose.
No, Ann said explicitly that aluminum would not protect your brain during a massive CME discharge. Okay? So that if steel is required to protect your brain, why would you think that aluminum would protect your electronics?
So you're talking about a Faraday box made out of aluminum in which you store your precious sensitive electronic equipment.
Right.
Yeah, it's a different, when we're talking about a CME, we're talking about a magnetic field only. And it's true that a magnetic field, when it crosses aluminum or copper or anything, induces a current. And the idea is that you will get a current in the outside of the Faraday box, but it won't go inside. So you understand? That's why you need some padding if you're using a galvanized steel.
So aluminum would protect your brain during CME?
No, because it isn't like your skull is made of aluminum. And what happens is the CME, let's say that you had an aluminum helmet on, and it did capture the electrical field that was made by the magnetic field from the CME. What you want is you want to capture the magnetic field. That magnetic field will induce a current in your nerves.
Okay, so you worry about two different things there. The magnetic field.
Right. It's different kinds of energy there, John. That's the difference. All right.
An electromagnetic pulse, an EMP, it's a field that contains both electrical and magnetic fields.
Okay, so the magnetic field will not injure your electronics?
Well, the main source is the current, and so what you want to do is you want to capture the current. The magnetic field will penetrate because the aluminum is not magnetic, and so it won't stop the magnetic field. But when you have an EMP, the electrical and the magnetic field are together. So when it stops the electrical field, it also stops the magnetic field.
Okay, so the magnetic field is not going to injure your electronics? Or do we not know?
What I'm trying to say is that with a CME, all you have is a magnetic field. With a EMP, you have both. You have electromagnetic field. So the electrical magnetic field acts as one field. In other words, there's an interplay between the electrical field and the magnetic field, and they act then together. So when the electrical field, when the EMP strikes, the EM field gets caught by the aluminum because aluminum does conduct electricity. When you have just the CME, which is just the magnetic field, you don't have an electrical field with it. So it would go through the aluminum, and it will interact with the nerve cells in your brain, and 90% of your nerve cells are in the brain. Now, I know that's difficult to understand because we're not used to dealing with just a magnetic field. That's why you want to wear something that is magnetic over your head so that when the magnetic field comes, it's captured by that type of metal. It's just like your refrigerator magnet.
Okay, but that magnetic field will not alter your electronics?
No, I'm saying that we're talking two different things. And you're saying we use a Faraday box when we have an EM pulse, an electromagnetic pulse. The electromagnetic pulse, the electrical and the magnetic fields, they're two different things, but they're in an EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, it's all one. They're bound together.
We got a break, guys. We need to take the break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. This is J.R. Moore. And off the air, I was talking to Ann, and we were discussing how to get John's answer here in a more succinct manner. The question, Ann, as we discussed off the air, is will the aluminum shielding protect electronic equipment? And please continue.
Oh, okay. You're talking about a Faraday box made of aluminum, and you're saying a CME is coming, not an electromagnetic pulse, but a CME.
Right.
Now, we know that CMEs induce currents in conductors. We know that because, for instance, during the Carrington event, the telegraph lines burned up, and that was because of the current that was induced by the CME. That CME was magnetic, and it continued, even though it had passed through. It did induce a current, and it continued to pass through. We also have ground currents when a CME comes in. We do not have currents like in a house that has aluminum siding on it. So we're talking about a conductor that is relatively thin and very long, and that's the thing that catches the ground current from the CME. So a CME, as it goes through the aluminum, will induce a current, but it will continue, and it very well could damage your electrical equipment if the CME is strong enough and if you have long wires. Now, whether it would damage, they do know that on satellites, when a CME comes in, it does damage the IC circuitry, the circuit boards, and what they do is they shield it and they rotate the satellite so that the CME does not so that the electronics in the satellite is protected from the CME.
And the question is, we talked about off the air, will the aluminum Faraday box protect the electronic equipment inside it?
From a CME.
Right.
It probably will, but it might not.
Okay. Well, it has to be insulated from the metal like any Faraday box, right?
Right. Anything that's, if it's not magnetic, it's not going to catch the magnetic field.
Okay. And then John's question was, would the magnetic field itself cause any harm to electronic equipment?
It would be like, yes, it could, if it were strong enough, and if your electronic equipment is not shielded from magnetic effects. Not from electrical effects, from magnetic effects.
Okay. And then I think that answers that well enough. John, are you still there?
Question. On those ground currents, like if you are living in a trailer and your trailer is tied down and staked into the ground, can those ground currents, like come back up and
oh yeah, they burn out the emergency generators that the nuclear power plants have that are sitting on the tarmac, the extra ones.
Okay, so if you're grounded, you're in danger, huh?
Yeah, because it's coming through the ground.
Okay.
You have to disconnect your antennas from ground currents if you're a ham radio operator.
I think we are out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Linda in Ohio, email me. You got a question? Charlene, give me a call if you need to. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, John.
All right.
That's it for today. That's it for the week. You all be safe out there. Have a great day. Buy lots of ammunition. The code words for those behind enemy lines. Once again, read Sun Tzu. This is your heads up. Read Sun Tzu. Be safe, and God bless America.
Paul Drockton with Drockton Bullion is trying to secure your financial future.